Every headline that you've read this year says the same thing about Vancouver real estate. It's dead. Sales are down, prices are falling. But hold on a minute. On the surface, that's true. Detached house sales are running about a third below normal levels, and the average house is selling about 10% below what it was a year ago. But here's what the headlines aren't telling you. Below that frozen surface, something has already changed. The benchmark price for a detached house in Vancouver has been falling for a long time, and it fell every month from September right through January, and then in February, it stopped. And you know what? It's actually crept up every month since then. That's not the story that everybody's watching for. No, everybody is waiting for the crash to finish. But in one specific corner of this market, the bottom might already be behind us. And the people waiting for the bottom are going to be too late and the last one's in. There's a window that's open right now, and it's open because almost nobody has noticed it yet. Do not make a move in Vancouver real estate until you understand what the data is saying. Let's get into it right now. Before I show you any of this, real quick introduction. My name is Sebastian Albrecht with the Living in Vancouver BC team. And here on this channel, I help you understand what it's like to live in Vancouver and how to buy in Vancouver without getting burned. And I want to be straight with you. I want to make sure we understand what this video is and what it isn't. This is not me telling you the market is booming, because it isn't. Prices are down nearly 10% from a year ago, and the overall market is running well below normal levels. So if you came for a hype video, this isn't one. What this is one trend that almost nobody is reporting on. I spent the better part of a day going through 20 years of Vancouver sales data, segment by segment, east side versus west side, not the headline numbers that everyone reposts, but the stuff underneath them. And I kept landing on the same pattern in one corner of this market. A pattern that, if you're a buyer, quietly works in your favor right now. I did the digging so you can see what the monthly headlines skip over. 3 things that I'm going to prove to you with actual numbers, and I'm going to show you the soft data along with the strong, because the honest read here is the entire point. 1, demand has turned. 2, price has not yet. 3, that gap is your opportunity. So let's get into it. So in a weak market like we've had in Vancouver for quite some time, what you typically see is demand is low and inventory rises. And in that kind of environment, prices decline. And that's what we've seen across the entire geography of Metro Vancouver. Soft market, lots of inventory, very little in the way of sales, and then prices have been coming down. And as I've said, in the last year alone in Vancouver, we've seen prices decline about 10%. Now, what are we looking for when we are looking for a turn in the market? We're not looking for prices to rise, because honestly, prices are a trailing indicator. First, what you want to see is buyers return into the market. And then what you see is that absorption starts to tighten. You see the excess inventory that's been in the market start to get sopped up by the buyers that are coming back into the market. And from there, inventory starts to decline. And when that starts to happen, well, finally, what you start to see is that prices start to rise. Anyone who's waiting for prices to rise is basically going to miss the boat. The question that you want answered if you're looking for an edge in this market is not, are prices rising, but is demand starting to increase? Across Metro Vancouver, we had a peak in our market in the spring of 2022. So that was the post-COVID boom. And from that point on, following through in the rest of 2022, what really hit the market hard were the rapidly increasing interest rates. So the market really stumbled when that happened. And so we saw this peak at that time. And the best example of this is the detached housing market. This is the one that was hit hardest. So in March of 2022, typical Vancouver house hit a peak value of $2,609,800. And it bottomed out in February of 2026 at $2,293,400. That's nearly a 12.1% drop in just under 4 years. And houses did fall harder than condos, which declined about 10%, and townhouses that declined nearly 5.8%. But West Side houses were hit even harder, and the pain has been drawn out for a much longer time. For a West Side house, the peak was 2017, and the benchmark today is still about $650,000 below that 2017 peak. That's not just a post-COVID dip. There are segments of our housing market that have been suffering and in decline for nearly a decade. That's how much pessimism is priced into our market. market, and that's why a turn in demand is a really significant story. It turns out that buyers who waited were absolutely right to do so. The question that we have today is the waiting period over? Has the calculus changed? So let's talk about some of the nuances and the changes that I'm noticing in the market right now. And we're going to go through 6 different patterns, 6 different changes that are truly remarkable and indicating that something is going on that you should be aware of. First of all, looking at detached houses, sales have flipped. There's no doubt about it. If we look at year over year, sales went through the roof in comparison to 2025. Sales on the west side were up over 47%, 47.2% from May 2026 to May 2025. And on the east side of Vancouver, they also increased really significantly, up 26.4%. And what's significant here is this is the first May where sales actually increased year over year since 2022. That's right, we declined every single year until 2025. That's when they bottomed out. And this is the turn. Both submarkets saw an uptick from 2026 in comparison to 2025 for the first time since 2022. For Vancouver West, it was a bottom of 228 in 2025. And then we bumped up this year to 287. And for the east side, it was a bottom of 294 in 2025. And we're up to 317 this year. This is a multi-year slide that stopped and reversed for both submarkets in the same year. Just a little nuance here, I think that's worth touching on. That west side number for May of 2025, those 228 sales was almost 50% below the 10-year average. That is a trough, and we are building off of that trough. If nothing else, this is a textbook indication that a bottom could be forming. But here's the truth. This market is still relatively weak. It's still underperforming. In fact, this last month, sales on the west side of Vancouver were 36% below the 10-year average. And on the east side, they were 38% below the 10-year average. Sales across the entire market are easily 20 to 30% below the 10-year average. So there is plenty of softness still present. And that's why nobody is recognizing this quiet pocket of strength. Everybody is looking at the weakness, and that is the headline. The thing that I'm noticing is the direction might be starting to change, not the levels. That divergence is the point here, and the reason that people aren't flooding the market right now, hammering down the door to buy everybody's home. The next signal I noticed is that absorption is starting to tighten. This is an indication that pressure is starting to build. The indication of absorption that we look at is the sales to active listing ratio. And for the city of Vancouver, the house sales to active listing ratio increased significantly year over year. It went from just under 8% in May 2025 to just under 12% in May of 2026. This is still solidly indicating a buyer's market, but it's the direction of those numbers that I find really, really interesting. The months of inventory also fell. It went from 12.7 back in May of 2025 down to 8.4 in May of 2026. Another indication that there's less overhang and more absorption. Overall, the market in Vancouver saw the sales to active listing ratio go from 12% in 2025 to 14% in 2026. This is the first improvement we're seeing year over year after falling for years. In fact, it was as high as 31% back in 2023. It's a relatively small improvement, but what's critical is the direction that things are moving in and that it's stopped deteriorating. The other thing that I'm noticing is that inventory levels are thinning. Active listings for houses are down 10% year over year. On the west side by 10.8% and on the east side by 9.8%. And that's happening even as sales are surging. There's more buyers chasing fewer homes. And then the other thing is that new listings are also down about 10%. That means sellers are holding back. They're not panicking. And so while buyers are returning and sellers are sitting out, the supply-demand gap narrows from both ends at once. This is the single most bullish indicator that a price turn could be coming, and almost nobody is talking about it. To be honest, this is the one that made all of my digging worth it. When I saw it, new listings down, active inventory down, and sales climbing all at the same time, that's the moment I knew this was a real trend and not just noise. Because that combination is the classic setup before prices move up. Here's the thing though, prices aren't doing all that great. In fact, the detached market is weakest in terms of prices. It fell 9.7% year over year. But the interesting thing is that the decline appears to have stopped. The low was in February 2026, where a typical house in Vancouver was $2,293,400. It increased in April to $2,304,100, and again in May to $2,310,400. Those are the first back-to-back monthly upticks in price that we've seen in a long time. It's looking like the capitulation moment was back in January 2026, where prices fell from $2,407,700 in December to $2,308,000 in January, in just 1 month. And then they flattened. That's what you look for when you look for a bottom. Once again, I just want to point out that price is the last domino. For single family detached in Vancouver right now, sales, absorption, inventory, listings, every major indicator has turned. Price is the laggard that is likely to catch up. If you're a buyer in Vancouver's real estate market right now, that lag is your window of opportunity. I do want to point out that there is a difference on what's going on the west side of Vancouver as well as the east side. And we're seeing a stronger indicator of that bottom being put in and perhaps a rebound on the west side than we are seeing on the east side. And so that rebound of sales on the west side year over year was sharper, a 47% increase of sales over 2025. On the east side, it was maybe more of a representative signal where we saw sales increase 26% over a year ago. It's likely because the decline on the west side has been stronger. It's been in place a lot longer and prices are down much more significantly on the west side of Vancouver than they are on the east side. So right now, a typical house on the west side of Vancouver is $3,025,000. Where on the east side of Vancouver, it's almost half of that at just $1,654,900. The east side is where a larger pool of people generally transact. So these changes aren't going to be felt as sharply as they are on the west side of Vancouver. But the fact that we're seeing it in both segments is an indication that this is not just a sub-market impact. This is something that is happening citywide across the board for all detached homes. No matter what the trend is in our market, whether it's up or down, this is a market that I understand deeply and completely. And I'd love to be able to help you as well. If you're looking to move to Vancouver or move within Vancouver, my contact information is right there up on the screen. Be sure to reach out anytime. But for now, let's get back to the video. Okay, let's make this make sense depending on your individual situation. Let's start with houses. If you're looking at buying a house right now, you need to understand that every leading indicator is pointing that the bottom has been put in and that prices are likely to follow. If you're sitting on the sidelines, watching those prices and waiting for them to start to increase before you jump in, your window may be closing. Here's what you want to be watching for to confirm that this trend continues. You want to watch the month over month price indication on houses right now. What happens? Is it continuing to increase or not? You also want to keep a sharp eye on the sales to active listing ratio. If it continues to increase, that's an indication that the trend is continuing. And if it hits that 20% level, well, you're going to find yourself in a seller's market and there's going to be a lot of competition in the market. And lastly, keep an eye on those inventory levels. Does inventory continue to decline and stay thin through the summer? And if you're a condo or townhouse buyer, what does this mean to you? Well, your opportunity is still there. The condo and townhouse markets are still lagging. Prices are declining. There's still a significant amount of inventory and options for you in the market. However, this turn in the house market might be an indication that things may be starting to shift elsewhere as well. That is something to keep an eye on. So also, you should be keeping an eye on those month over month benchmark prices. Also keep an eye on the sales to active listing ratios and the total amount of inventory. Are those all starting to move in those directions that are indicating that a bottom has been put in? Now, if you're a seller, you can rejoice in the fact that properly priced homes are finding the deepest pool of buyers they've found since way back in 2022. However, this is still a relatively soft market. And so you need to know that overpricing a home is still going to get punished. The fact that demand is returning doesn't mean that pricing power has returned. You need to be really, really cautious about the way that you price and position homes in today's market. I need to be really, really honest with you here. This is a very early indication of a demand-led inflection off a decade low base, not a confirmed recovery. The edge you have here is being able to position before everybody else catches up, but you still have to have your eyes wide open to all the risks involved in purchasing in a still relatively weak, below normal levels market. So far, this is a relatively tenuous, although positive situation that we find ourselves in the market right now. But there are things that could really reaccelerate the decline, like suddenly rapidly increasing interest rates or an absolute flood of new listings. This is a bit of a head start, but it's not a guarantee of the direction. The value that I hope you're taking away from this video is being able to see and understand that there's trends and nuances to this market really below the headlines. And I'm seeing something that's giving me an indication that things are starting to change in our market. The direction of our market may be significantly changing. And this is an opportunity both on the buying side as well as the listing side that you might be able to take advantage of before everyone else catches on. And On top of that, I'm giving you some tools, things to look for in the market in the months to come that are going to indicate whether this trend is taking hold or not. And those are opportunities that I help my clients with all the time. If you're looking for somebody that can help you with this along the way, I am a real estate agent that has helped hundreds of people do exactly what you're trying to do. And if you'd like my help to understand this market and what it might mean for you, be sure to reach out anytime. My contact information is right there on the screen. I've helped hundreds of people in exactly your situation make sense of this market, find the right neighborhood, and find the right home. And I can help you and your family as well whenever you're ready. But of course, if you're not quite ready for that and you'd like to do a little more research, well, I've got you covered for that as well. I have well over 150 videos answering all of your questions, all about what life in Vancouver is like, as well as all about what it's like to move to Vancouver and what it's like to live in this city. And so no matter your question, you're going to find the answers in those videos. If you enjoyed this video, I think there's one other video that you're really going to like, and it's this video over here. It's all about the kind of condo that I'd be buying in today's market. There's so much content out there about the things you shouldn't be doing. This is one video about the thing that you should be doing right now. Check out that video. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end, and hopefully I see you next week.